Hey everybody, welcome to our summer house church series. We are going to be studying the book of Proverbs this summer, and I'm really excited about it because I just feel like we desperately need God's wisdom, in our day, as individuals, as a church, as people just, living in Portland in this time and place. It's a great book to study. 20 years ago, when I was wrapping up my time at Fuller Seminary, kind of the culmination of our Hebrew study was a class on the book of Proverbs. And we looked at all of these Proverbs in their original language, and it was just amazing. Don't ask me to conjugate any Hebrew verbs today, but I do remember a lot of things from that class. I remember even on the first day, the professor, Dr. Bob Stallman, he got up there and he was like, "We are living in an age of too much information and not enough wisdom." That really stuck with me because, it was true in 2006 and it is more true in 2026. We can literally look up any, fact on our phones. I was listening to a podcast even this morning and one of the co-hosts joked with the other one, "The internet's never lied to us." Clearly a good joke. But we can use AI to write papers. We can use AI to write sermons, God forbid. We can use it to do so many things, but we are forgetting how to be human beings. How to be people made in the image of God. We are forgetting what real wisdom is. So it is my hope and my prayer that our study in the book of Proverbs will kind of wake us up to that and remind us what timeless wisdom really is. Before we look at our text for tonight, I want to take a moment to answer the question that we should ask every time we read the Old Testament. Where is Jesus in this book? Where is Jesus and his gospel in the book of Proverbs? Well, I think the whole book is actually a gift from God to guide his people. Over and over again, the author calls his readers son. And that reminds me of the spirit of sonship that's spoken of in Romans chapter 8. There is a way to study the book of Proverbs and completely miss the point. We could say, if we do these things, God will welcome me as his child. If we manage our money well, if we marry a Proverbs 31 woman, if we stop lying, then God will save us. But if you do that, you're forgetting that God's already saved you by his grace. He's already made you his child. He already calls you son or daughter, and these are his instructions. These are like the 10 Commandments. This is how to live as forgiven and free people. One more thing about this. Solomon, who wrote most of these Proverbs, was a genius, but Jesus was greater than Solomon. Matthew 12:42 tells us that. Jesus is wisdom. He perfectly embodied everything that's taught in this book, and the wisest thing that we can do is to worship him, to bow down, to worship him, to live by his teachings, to love God and neighbor as he did. All of that is really a reflection of the grace that we've been given. So let's take a brief look at this proverb, found in verse 7 of chapter 1. "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." That's it. So one amazing thing about Proverbs is that God graciously offers his wisdom to foolish people and weak people. And what is the qualifier for all this? Basically, we have to ask. We have to say, "God, we need your wisdom." We have to go to God and ask for his wisdom. We have to, go to godly people in our lives and just say, I don't want to discover my own path. I want to walk in God's ways. I've given my life to Jesus. He saved me, and now I want to be more like him. Wisdom literature is one of the great ways that God forms us. He sanctifies us. He makes us holy. He makes us more like Jesus. And this proverb is telling us that it begins with fearing the Lord. Fearing the Lord. That doesn't mean that we are afraid of him. It just means that we put him first in our lives. That we live in this posture of reverence toward him. That we bow down to him. That we know that he knows better than we do. That even when we don't understand why something's happening, we don't understand his ways, we still put our faith in him. The proverb is telling us, right at the beginning of this book, that foolishness and pride go together. That a fool will stay a fool if they're too prideful to ask for help. Keep in mind here, and my Bible has even a little note about this, that a fool is not a person with a low IQ. Some of the most intelligent people I know are fools. A fool in wisdom literature is a morally deficient person. It's a person who doesn't fear God. I'm reminded of the psalmist that writes, "The fool in his heart says, there is no God." So if you don't believe in God, or you live like there's no God, you are in danger of being a fool. And it is okay to begin life as a fool. It is okay to begin your spiritual journey with Jesus as a fool, but God calls us out of that. He invites us out of that. None of us need to stay that way. We can be saved by Jesus, and then we can be taught how to live by Jesus. We can look to his word. We can be guided by it. We can live this life of faithfulness. And just one closing thought before we get into the discussion. Out of gratitude for what Jesus has done for you, seek his wisdom. Seek wisdom. Put it first. Remember that Jesus was wiser than Solomon. Take up your cross. Follow him. And that is the way to find true wisdom. Amen.